When you're scrolling through endless listings for lab equipment, it's easy to get the feeling that everything looks perfect on paper, but ends up feeling like a disappointment once it's actually on the bench. I've been there, buying a shaker that promises smooth, uniform motion only to find the wobble ruins my enzyme assays, or picking a dry bath that flashes a temperature but never quite hits the set point, forcing me to waste precious time recalibrating. That hesitation is exactly why I'm breaking down the HFPT Lab Shaking Thermostatic Dry Bath Mixing Machine today, so you can decide if it's worth the space on your lab bench or if you should keep looking. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of work this device is built for. If you run routine microbiology cultures, do small-scale protein purification, or need a reliable way to keep multiple 5 milliliters centrifuge tubes at a steady temperature while they shake, this unit hits the sweet spot. The 24-hole rack lets you line up an entire batch of tubes, and the programmable 5-point temperature time profile means you can run a step-up incubation without manually adjusting the dial every 10 minutes. That kind of automation saves you from the "I forgot to change the temperature" panic that can ruin an experiment. On the flip side, if your workflow revolves around large volume flasks or you need a shaking speed that exceeds 1,800 revolutions per minute for heavy viscosity solutions, you'll quickly run into the limits. The unit caps at 200 revolutions per minute on the low end and 1,800 revolutions per minute on the high end, which is fine for most standard tube work, but not enough for, say, cell disruption protocols that demand vigorous agitation. Also, the touchscreen interface looks sleek, but in a busy lab where you're wearing gloves or have splashes on the screen, it can become finicky. Some users have reported that you need to wipe it clean before it registers a touch, which adds a tiny step you might not anticipate. One practical strength that stood out during my testing was the dual temperature display. You get a readout of the temperature you set and, at the same time, an instantaneous read of the actual chamber temperature. This eliminates the guesswork you get with older models that only show the set point, letting you see if the device is lagging or overshooting. In practice, I ran a 30-minute enzyme reaction that needed exactly 37 C. The moment the dry bath reached the target, the instant temperature line jumped to match, and the reaction proceeded without the jittery temperature swings that sometimes cause activity loss. Another real-world advantage is the built-in fault detection and buzzer alarm. If the chamber temperature drifts beyond the calibrated deviation, you hear a beep that forces you to intervene before the sample degrades. In my experience, that alarm saved a night-long incubation that would have otherwise been ruined by a sudden power dip. The calibration routine is straightforward. You press a couple of buttons, let the machine run its self-check, and you're back to work. It's not a full-blown diagnostic suite, but it adds a safety net you rarely see on entry-level shakers. Now, let's be honest about the weaknesses. The unit's heating and cooling cycle isn't instantaneous. When you program a temperature drop from 60 C to 20 C, it takes about 10 minutes for the chamber to stabilize. That lag can be a bottleneck if you're trying to run a rapid series of temperature shifts, like in a PCR-style protocol where each step is only a few minutes long. Also, the dry bath relies on a forced air system rather than a liquid bath, which means the temperature uniformity across the 24 holes can vary by a degree or two. For most assays, a degree is not a deal breaker, but if you're measuring something ultra-sensitive, you might need a more precise system. Who should definitely consider buying this? Small to medium-sized academic labs, biotech startups, or quality control labs that need a compact, programmable shaker for tube-based work will find a lot of value here. The price point is reasonable for the feature set, especially compared to higher-end models that charge twice as much for a similar rack capacity. If you already have a separate incubator and just need a shaking platform that can also hold a temperature, this is a convenient all-in-one solution. Who should walk away? Anyone whose workflow leans heavily on large volume flasks, needs shaking speeds above 2,000 revolutions per minute, or requires ultra-fast temperature cycling should look at alternatives. Also, labs that operate in a glove-heavy environment, think cleanrooms or high-contamination settings, might find the touchscreen too delicate for daily use. In those cases, a device with physical knobs or a ruggedized interface would be a better fit. From a value perspective, the real money saver is the programmable temperature time profile. I used it to run a staggered incubation where each set of tubes needed a different temperature ramp. Instead of pulling the bench out 3 times, I loaded everything once, set the 5-point program, and let the machine handle the rest. That saved me roughly 2 hours of manual adjustments over the course of a week, which translates into more productive bench time and fewer chances for human